Hey, ladies and gents, welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. Episode 129, as always, I'm joined by Jordan.
Great to be here, Jared. I'm glad to have you here on the show. How are you doing today?
Good, I'm glad this bit's heading into 2019 with us. It's great.
We just packed it up and took it with us.
Yeah, happy birthday to Dom. He's not with us this week because he's celebrating his birthday. Hopefully it's a good one for him. He's turning 45, believe it or not. No, he's not.
That's a big one.
Yeah, the big 45. So
Dom
it's his
always
birthday.
talked about, back in the day, Dom always talked about being 45 and how excited he was, so I'm glad he got there.
Yeah, I'm glad too. It was a long time. So he won't be with us this week. He'll be joining us again next week. Let's hop into what we've been playing. So for me, pretty slow week in terms of playing new things. Celeste came out for Games with Gold on Xbox, so I definitely downloaded it. It's one of my Game of the Year selections for 2018, and I figured I'll just play it again on Xbox. Sucked me in.
Nice.
Beat it again on the Xbox because I had the added incentive of achievements, right? I don't really have that on Switch, so it's like it gives me a reason to want to play it outside of it just being a great game. So I played through it, got all the achievements for playing through it normally. Now I'm going through and getting the collectibles and doing the Bsides, which you're familiar with the Bsides, right? Have you heard about the Bsides on Celeste?
They're like bonus levels?
So it's essentially every level, every chapter, maybe not every chapter, but like most of them have a cassette tape you can find. And when you find it, you unlock the B-side. And it's essentially a remixed, reimagined version of that chapter with the difficulty bumped up pretty heavily. So it's something you want to go to after you finish the game because it takes using all of the mechanics you've learned throughout the game and your tricks and tips that you've kind of picked up along the way. Very much harder in terms of difficulty than the regular chapter. So I've been playing through those. The cool thing is, since those are so difficult, you get an achievement for each one you complete. Whereas you don't necessarily get an achievement for all the chapters, I don't think. If memory serves me correct. Maybe you do.
So is it more like a mini chapter, mini bonus chapter almost?
It's essentially just giving the chapters replay value. So it's like chapter 1 is a regular level, and then chapter 1B would be the B-side. And it takes a lot of things that are familiar with that specific chapter, like maybe the types of obstacles or the new mechanics they introduce in that specific chapter, and they turn up the difficulty to where you kind of have to be way better at doing those things that they teach you. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, so they're really fun. They're really difficult. Obviously, in PlayStation, they show you the percentage of the trophy in terms of how many people have completed it, right? If it's hard or ultra hard. I don't think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, when you actually unlock the the trophy, it doesn't pop up and show you that, right? You have to go into the trophies to see that.
Oh, yeah, you gotta hit that PS button for sure.
Yeah, so on Xbox, when you get a rare trophy, it actually shows you the percentage when it pops up on screen, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't have to dig into the achievement.
Once again, I just want to reiterate how much I love the progress bar that PlayStation doesn't have.
Yeah.
That you get over for the Xbox achievements. I think that's no-brainer. I guess it like you could say it like ruins the mystery of trophies if that's a thing, but I like the progress bar, especially when it's something tedious.
Yeah, and obviously the cool thing with Xbox too is if it's a rare achievement, if it's under 10% of people that get it, I think it's 10. It's either 10 or 5. It has like a diamond when it pops up, right? And for all of the B-sides, they're less than like 3%. I finished the first 3 B-sides, so it's cool
when
when
lots of diamonds.
Exactly, when you finish it and you're like already feeling accomplished because it's super difficult, but then the achievement pops up and it's like, oh, I got the achievement, but then you're like, oh, it's a super rare achievement. So it's like added on, right? The game's fantastic. If any of you have Xbox Live and haven't played Celeste, give it a try, download it and check it out. I think it's one of the best mechanically platformers I've played in a very long time, and it has a really engaging story. It might not necessarily connect with everybody because it is a little over the top in terms of hitting you right in the mouth of what it's trying to convey in terms of anxiety and self-doubt and all of these kind of mixed messages you tend to send yourself as you're growing up. But I really connected with it and I enjoyed it. And yeah, it's a fantastic experience. So just enjoying playing through Celeste again. And the other thing I got to...
just with Celeste, it's one of those games that, came out so early last year. I kind of, unfortunately, did forget about it. So I'll definitely be playing it on Switch at some point. But that is one that I'm planning on circling back on.
Yeah, and the game does get more difficult as it goes on, but I love the game design because it does an excellent job of laying the seeds early on in the story and early on in the levels of these mechanics or these kind of objects you're going to have to interact with, and it slowly builds on them throughout the game. Really phenomenal game design, in my opinion. It's just an all-around great game.
Where was it on your ranking?
I think I had it 6. In hindsight, it might be higher than that. The problem, like you just talked about, it came out so early in the year.
Yeah.
Like if I would have replayed through it again on Xbox at the end of the year or before I did my game of the year, I think it would have bumped it up, because right now playing through it again on Xbox, I'm like, man, this might be in my top 3 or 4. Like, it's just I played it so early last year that I kind of lost steam on it. It's not because I don't love the game. It's just the bias of like new experiences, as opposed to something you played way long ago. And I think it's a lesson I learned in doing due diligence to try and go back and not forget those early experiences in the year,
Right. So if you could choose between, and let's say you have the achievements over on Switch, is that the best way to play it?
Like if there were achievements?
Like Xbox achievements, because I know you love achievements, so I know that would be a caveat always, but I guess for me, since I don't care about achievements, Switch is the way to go, right? Because it's the Switch bonus, whatever you want to call that.
Even for me, somebody who does love achievements, I chose to play it on Switch, and then now I didn't even buy it on Xbox, right? I got it for Xbox Games with Gold. None of that's not worth the money, but I already experienced it on Switch, and I just got lucky that they added to Games with Gold. But Switch 100%.
Exclusive or anything?
It was timed. Xbox. I think it was timed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not a long amount of time, but I do think it came out on Switch, and then a month or two later it came to other platforms. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it came to Switch first. But yeah, Switch, no matter what, is I think the place to play it.
There you go.
Just because I'm not going to lie and say it's an easy game by any means. Later in the game, there will be parts that you might get a little frustrated at and have to continuously retry, right? And I think having it on the go works to its benefit with that, because you're like, oh, I have some time to kill. Let me try that part I couldn't get past, right? And pop it open and try it again.
I'm glad you said it that way. How do you feel about Smash Bros. On the actual mobile Switch with your Joy-Cons connected?
I don't like it at all. I usually just play it on a Pro controller on my TV. I shouldn't say at all. I mean, it's not bad. It's just not my preferred way of playing Smash. I guess I came a little too hard on it.
Definitely not. But I think it's super workable. I think it's like I need to get more used to it. I need to get better at the game. I'm still not where I want to be, but I think I can get used to it enough. And yeah, like Pro controller is always the way to go. I mean, some people like GameCube, that's fine, but yeah, I think obviously if you have the choice, Pro controller at home.
I will say, I do think it's a better experience than Smash on the 3DS, in my opinion, because I own Smash on the 3DS as well, and that was really tough for me. It just didn't feel right. It was kind of clumsy. Yeah, I don't dislike it mobily. It's just, for me, preferred 100% of the way Pro controller on my TV.
What kind of 3DS were you playing it on?
The newest, the 3DS XL. I had the big boy, the beef boy.
The new 3DS XL with the nub?
No. The second to last 3DS.
Okay.
The second to last 3DS XL. Yeah.
I don't know if it makes a difference, like size-wise or whatever. It was less clumsy than I pictured it being.
Yeah.
Of course, it's nothing compared to actually playing it on a home console like the Switch. But more enjoyable. I had a lot more fun with the 3DS version than I thought I would.
Yeah, for me too. The flat joystick on the 3DS wasn't a huge issue for me for a lot of games, like the stubby joystick. And I think for Smash specifically, that's where I found a lot of my discomfort with it. Whereas obviously the Joy-Con has a little bit more extended. Yeah, but I prefer console version, but mobile isn't bad. I came a little strong there of like, it's awful. It's not awful. It's just not my preferred. The other thing I played, because I wanted to get around to it, is the 30-minute one-shot RE2 demo. I might get a lot of flack for this, but I've always thought that the older Resident Evil games don't hold up. That was just my opinion, seeing like footage of the game or seeing people playing it. I eventually got around to playing the Resident Evil remake.
Remember, Jared, on this show, it's Resident Evil.
What did I... Oh, you have to say it specifically like that? Resident Evil.
Well, you don't have to, like, actually say it like that, but it's still... I hear it every time someone mentions it on a podcast. It's Resident Evil.
Okay, Resident Evil. Enunciate. I tried the Resident Evil remake.
Sorry, I told you about my brother asking me about the Resident Evil series, right?
I remember you bringing up that story,
Okay, sorry.
Pine Resident Evil. And I didn't like the static cameras. I didn't like the controls. I just didn't think the shooting mechanics were very good.
Even though they're updated, it's all still tough to do, man.
And I definitely think that Resident Evil is one of those games that, or the series, I guess it gets better as it goes along in terms of controls. But unless you have that nostalgia attachment to it, I think it is hard to go back and play it. I played Resident Evil Remake, which was a remake of... So it was actually improved on the original, right? In terms of all of that stuff. And still didn't feel right to me. I just didn't like it. I know people love the series. So with Resident Evil 2, with this remake coming out, it looks gorgeous, by the way. It's the best remake they've ever done. And I loved Resident Evil 7. And it's using a lot of that engine. It might be the same engine. I don't know how exactly they went about it.
Yeah, it is.
So I played the one-shot demo. I think personally,
engine, I think.
I'm glad they changed it to where you don't have to stand still to shoot necessarily. That's another part of the franchise that's weird to me.
Sure.
Of like, stop, aim, shoot. Yeah, exactly. Awful.
Yeah. Because like, very unrealistic if you think about it. Like, obviously you can run and shoot at the same time. You can move around and pull a trigger.
And I do think another problem I have with the series is that, especially in this demo too, I realized that these zombies are kind of bullet spongy. Like, you have to go in on them, and
headshots.
In my opinion, and I know I'm going to get flack for this, I think it's lazy game design for the simple fact that I think now that you're bringing this into the modern age and you're kind of tweaking the controls so they're not as slow and cumbersome, it's not a very long game. Like, even the director came out and said, even with this remake, it's like 5 to 10 hours between each character. So it's like 20 hours, right, between Leon and what's her name?
Valentine? Is it Jill Valentine?
Jill, yeah, it's Leon and Jill. I'm pretty sure. Jill, so it's not a very long game, and the way you kind of counteract that for a game that used to be really slow, right, is that, and I know they've always been kind of bullet spongy, but in this one it kind of seemed pretty evident. You make it so the enemies aren't that easy to defeat, and obviously limiting ammo has been a staple of Resident Evil. So
another thing is, like, I think it seems like the longtime players will not even necessarily always try to kill certain zombies in certain situations.
They'll just run by
them.
Yeah.
They'll run by them or give them a bullet to slow them down and then get past them, something like that, because the line of survival in the earlier games, it seemed like, was really interesting in the way that, it was kind of intense, I guess.
So I won't be picking up this game, for the simple fact that it comes out really close to Kingdom Hearts 3, so I can't really justify buying 2 games back-to-back like that, especially if one I'm really not interested in. I do want to get RE2 Remake down the road on a sale. I think I want to eventually get it, but this kind of solidified a lot of my opinions about the old school Resident Evil games. This one obviously does a lot to fix a lot of that stuff, but the bullet sponginess is still there. It still is a little bit awkward in terms of movement. It's definitely not as bad as they used to be, but it still doesn't feel necessarily like a modern game in many ways, which is, even when you remake a game from the ground up, you're going to have some of those things you want to keep in for legacy purposes. But yeah, it was exactly what I expected it to be. The animation, I will say, for the zombies is really cool. There was that GIF that went around on Twitter of the guy shooting the zombie in the stomach with a shotgun, and he splits in half, and he continues to crawl on the floor at you. Really gory, really awesome.
Nice.
I do think people who loved Resident Evil 2 are going to devour this game. Shout out to Michael Huber and the Easy Allies guys. But for somebody who doesn't have attachment to or nostalgia for the very like clunky and cumbersome behaviors that this franchise had early on, it's not getting me day one. You know what I mean? So it was a cool demo, though. I do love the idea of like you have 30 minutes to play this demo and that's it. I think that's really cool. I mean, the fact that they have a demo period is rare these days, which is kind of odd because I remember the days of every game having a demo. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I wanted to get to the DMC5 demo, which you can no longer download if you can no longer find it in the shop and download it, but if you already had it downloaded, you can play it and download it again if you already had it in your system for your account. I've had it downloaded for like 2 weeks since it released. I just haven't gotten around to playing it. The reason I want to play that demo is because DMC is also a series that always looked like it didn't fit what I like to do in video games or how I like to play, but I've never actually played Devil May Cry. So I feel I can't really... I want to see where my opinions land in terms of getting my hands on it. So
you're a fan of OG God of War trilogy, right?
Yeah, but this is very... like, that's... It's the same style of game, but way more westernized. This is very Japanese, and it always has been.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think for me, in a lot of cases with RPGs or even like these types of combat, outside of From Software, because I think they're an anomaly, I always tend to go more towards westernized than Japanese. Even like the Bayonettas and the Platinum games. Yeah. Those never really interest me. The Yakuzas, which are RPGs, like I'm way more Western than I am Japanese in terms of taste. So I love the early God of War games. With Bayonetta, Devil May Cry, I always just look like, nah, not for me. You know.
We'll see. Yeah.
But I'm willing to try it, so I'm gonna get around to that this week, hopefully. That's it for me, though.
Shout out to Japan for coming through with the demos. You know?
Exactly. Shout out to Devil May Cry for revealing itself on an Xbox stage. Crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, we might see something Resident Evil announced this year at E3 on Xbox's stage because PlayStation isn't doing it. So if they had something to announce, you know. That's it for me in terms of what I've been playing. Read comics, watched movies. We have quite a bit of news to get to, so I kind of don't want to go in on that stuff. But yeah, had a decent week. What about you?
So I have been playing a little bit of a couple different things, but most recently finished the final expansion for Spider-Man PS4, and that is the Silver Lining DLC, which concludes the City That Never Sleeps saga, Jared, as it says at the end. Gives you a little prompt.
Saga. Good word.
Yeah. Involves... You've finished the first two?
Yes, I finished the first two. I just haven't started the third.
I'm sure you've seen promotional material where it involves Silver Sable, and obviously Hammerhead's been a big part, and like his gang has been a big part of this whole turf war that they've had going on. That was another one of the expansions. So this one, I think they were all, solid. I think you can agree the first two were solid. You like the first two, Jared?
Yeah, I think one was stronger than two in terms of like all the extracurricular stuff they added. I think two...
I will say I've only done main story with all three.
Okay.
Personally.
For two, I think the extracurricular stuff got a little ham-fisted. Like some of the challenge areas are not fun in my opinion, which is crazy because I love almost all of the challenge areas in the game. Just some of them were kind of cumbersome and just didn't feel good. There's one in like this like parking like a I keep wanting to say janitor, mechanics like garage area. Wasn't really a fan of it. Kind of bothered me. I did like the story more in the second one than the first one. Not that the first one was bad, but I did enjoy the actual narrative in the second one, probably because it focused more on. Was the first one? I'm getting confused.
First one's Black Cat. Second one is Hammerhead, and the third one is like mostly Silver Sable and some Hammerhead.
Is the second one where you find out that she has a kid? Or is it
that would be the
first DSL? Okay, so
Black Cat's not in the second one.
Yeah, so I did get him backwards. So yeah, I would say I really enjoyed the first one completely. Second one, I didn't enjoy the extracurricular stuff. The story was good. Yeah.
Cool. So I would say with this one, you know, like we said, you know, they're all solid expansions. Obviously, it's a great fucking game that you're playing. The suits are cool. And a couple things I didn't love. I think you've played at least enough to know, like, these sable armored up guys with like the hollow shields, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And they're like racing through you, and now there's like the brute version of that. A lot of the fights just get really overly complicated, and it's not like the frame rate breaks down or anything, but sometimes there's just too much going on screen. There's beeps with the bombs going off, and you know, lines being screamed in the background and all this shit going on, and
they're the worst enemy faction, so it's like I understand a lot of this.
This expansion really, you know how I talk about games should be wary of like leaning on their weak points, and I felt like this is exactly what that was, where these battles were, I mean, yeah, they're difficult, they're not, you know, anything that you can't, you know, get through, but they're just way too much going on, and it just gets to the point where it's chaotic, and you know, it becomes unfun. So unfortunately I didn't love that part, but it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't like detrimental, but like I also said, it was certainly playing to their weakness. So then another thing that I wasn't a fan of, I felt like for whatever reason, Spider-Man specifically, his dialogue and the story was pretty poor for whatever reason. Like the jokes of his, and you know, of course, Yuri, the actor's delivery was fine, but it was just, I felt like it wasn't the acting. I felt the writing was very poor for Spider-Man's character specifically. So that's pretty much all I've got to say. I will say it didn't leave a sour taste in my mouth. I think overall, you know, it's my favorite game of last year, and as a season pass with all the suits and the story expansion, I didn't even touch the side stuff, but I'm sure generally that stuff is of a decent quality. I think it's a great season pass, adding to a great game, my favorite game, like I said. So yeah, it concludes the City That Never Sleeps saga, Jared. So I'm sure you're going to be playing that soon.
Yeah, probably in the next week or so. That and the DMC5 demo I just need to get to. Yeah,
it's, you know, about the same. Might be a little bit longer. The story might be a little bit longer than the first two expansions. But, you know, a couple hours or so at the most. Anyways, what else? I've, like I said, just been kind of bits and pieces with games. My brother was over here yesterday playing Smash Bros. With me. I've been messing around, kind of mentioned earlier, talking about playing, I guess it's handheld mode. I always kind of like come to that and wonder what to say, right? Handheld mode. I was playing handheld mode in Smash Bros. You know, and watching something on my TV in the background. So, a little bit of Smash Bros. And Tetris Effect kind of had me feeling for Lumines, so I've been playing that and actually getting better at Lumines. Just like Smash Bros, these are games that I want to get a lot better at, because I like them, I enjoy them, but I'm just not super skilled in them yet. You know, I'm learning as I go. So Lumines, it's actually a pretty hard game as far as like how it allows you to unlock levels and progress in the single player aspects of it. So getting there with that game. Then I was telling you before the show, having download issues with my Switch. My home internet was fine, but the Switch itself was having issues downloading Bayonetta, so I haven't got to that yet. And did I mess around? I messed around with Red Dead a little bit more, just story-wise, and then a little bit more Valkyria Chronicles. Like I said, I was kind of just messing around with things, I guess is the best way to put it. I wasn't really digging my heels into much other than Spider-Man.
Yeah. You want to hop into the news? Anything else?
I mean, like you said, there were movies watched and comics read, but there's no need.
So we're actually going to be hopping into quickie news. Just before we have 3 big stories to get to, like pretty meaty stories. But I wanted to get to some of these smaller pieces of information that kind of broke over the last week or so. Last week was
beef, Jared.
Last week we did Game of the Year, right? So it's been 2 weeks of news buildup, right?
There you go.
Yeah. So first up on the quickie news, Take-Two and the NBA have re-upped their partnership for the 2K series. It costed Take-Two a whopping $1.1 billion over the next 7 years. NBA is growing pretty rapidly. It's still not even close to the numbers that the NFL pulls in, but the NBA is easily the number 2 sport in the United States, so it doesn't surprise us. The 2K series has been phenomenally successful. They set a sales record this year. Remember, we reported on that after the game had come out. Yeah, it's crazy that 2K is like $1.1 billion for the NBA license. Sure, you know, with NBA Live not being great and 2K kind of carving a dominant path, it's like, of course we're going to re-up for 7 years.
A dominant path.
Later on in the news, we're going to be getting to another partnership that hasn't necessarily worked out, but this one between Take-Two and NBA has been pretty profitable. So
I think there were multiple partnerships that haven't worked out recently, Jared.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I completely forgot. We're going to be talking about actually 2 partnerships. Next up, Super Data, which obviously looks at a lot of these numbers of revenue that these companies bring in terms of video games. They kind of focus on free-to-play. They had some numbers for 2018 that were kind of interesting. So they reported that Pokemon Go, this is for free-to-play games, Pokemon Go brought in $1.1 billion. League of Legends, it gets higher. League of Legends brought in $1.4 billion. You know, the game no one talks about that still is just going crazy. People love the esports with League of Legends.
That cool music video, you saw that, Jared?
Oh, KDA? Yeah. And lastly, the number 1, because these were the top 3, Fortnite brought in a whopping $2.4 billion.
That's ridiculous.
2.4. That's...
I gotta say, I'd just like to jump, if we could, kind of imagine Adam Sandler in the movie Click, Jared, with his remote.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're just rewinding. And let's go back to before Fortnite was released. I mean, is it released now? Who knows?
God.
But, you know what I mean? Like, even before early access, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, God, this game's been in development for so fucking long, and it looks cool, and it's a cool concept of, like, building a fort and trying to, what are you, like, keeping zombies out or whatever originally?
Yeah. I mean, the game was announced by Cliffy B. Just put that into perspective when he was still at Epic.
For Epic Games. So, it's been years and years and years, and I had no clue that it would just somehow connect with this whole battle royale thing and then skyrocket from there. So
it's funny that you bring up Fortnite. So often we get lost in this discussion of, you know, people are saying, oh, Fortnite's overtaken PUBG and Blackout came out for Call of Duty, and, you know, PUBG's just failing. Where is it? What's happened to that game? It's easily third in terms of what, you know, profits or what's happening with the like battle royale genre. Which isn't actually the case, because they also posted their premium revenue. So this is games you actually had to purchase, right? Whereas those other numbers were for free to play. You want to know? I'm going to go from 5 to 1, okay? Number 5, Red Dead Redemption 2, $516 million. Pretty impressive.
Came out at the end of the year, yeah.
Number 4, Call of Duty Black Ops 4, $612 million. This is for 2018 specifically. Number 3, Grand Theft Auto 5, $628 million.
That's great.
Number 2, FIFA 18, not FIFA 19. FIFA 19 is number 7. FIFA 18 brought in $790 million.
Well, because it was selling all year.
Exactly. And number 1 in revenue for 2018, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, $1,028 million. I don't know why they just, it's weird numbering there, but yeah, $1,028 million for PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds. So people like to talk about PUBG as if it's desperately behind Call of Duty Black Ops 4. But it was the highest earning premium game.
1,000 million? Did you just say 1,000 million?
That's what I said. They have that listed as that. 1,028 million. I think it's just that way. It's all listed in millions on this.
Yeah, I got
But it's like, yeah, number 2 FIFA is 790 million, and PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds is 128 million. 1,028 million, sorry. So yeah, this just proves that like PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is still making tons of money and it's still chugging along. And technically it's number 2 behind Fortnite because Black Ops 4 is number 4. So it's people forget how popular PUBG is just because it's not talked about as often, but it's still huge in its own right.
Absolutely.
Next bit of quickie news. This is something that kind of got me stoked. So during the end of 2018, we talked about how Lady Gaga was tweeting about playing Bayonetta, and that was actually really cool to hear about. Whether you're a big fan of Lady Gaga or not, just hearing a superstar like that talking about playing Bayonetta, right?
Whoa, should I call it that she's going to play Bayonetta in the movie adaptation and then, like, be a prophet right now, Jared? Should I do that?
You got it right for her performance in the 3rd remake of Star is Born. The movie's been remade so many times, it's crazy.
Oh, I didn't know not an original movie?
No, it was made in the 20s, then it was made in the 50s, then the 70s, and then now.
And this is the same, like, it's not just the same name?
No, it is the same movie, beat for beat.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's known for being like the most remade movie, but it's always like an award winner
Star
every
Wars
time it's made.
7.
What do you mean by that?
It was a joke. It was just a bad joke.
Okay, completely lost me.
Because it's like a remake of A New Hope.
I got you. Funny, yeah. It's like the new Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Anyways, the quickie news story is that Ariana Grande went on this Twitter spree talking about playing Let's Go Eevee for like 15 hours straight, which is crazy because she never really talks about. She's a huge pop star, but she never really talks about playing video games. And she was just like, yeah, I had a day off yesterday and I played Pokemon for 15 hours straight, no joke. Which is like, oh, it's crazy. Ariana Grande plays Pokemon, yada, yada, yada. And then the next day...
I have to say that it saddens me so much to know that this is so many people's introduction to actual Pokemon. And I know that maybe they wouldn't have gotten into it if it hadn't been for the Let's Go format, but it just crushes
Well, this wasn't her first Pokemon game. She talks about she's been playing Pokemon.
Not even her, but like... She's going to mention it, and then people are going to be like, oh, I should play Pokemon now. It's like, oh, God.
And then people are like, oh, that's
not
cute.
Not this one.
And then the next day, she popped up having an Eevee tattoo. Now, it's not clear if it's a permanent tattoo. She has tattoos. Sure. She's not somebody that doesn't have tattoos. But people are unsure if it's like a temporary tattoo or if it's a permanent tattoo. But she did have an Eevee tattoo. God. Henna, right?
What are they called?
Henna. Different word.
That's what I'm going to call them now.
I don't want to see a hentai Eevee tattoo. No, thank you. Rule 34. Gross.
Well, you went there. You said it, not me.
Yeah. Last bit of quickie news. This happened over the holiday break, and we never really got to it. So the PS4 has now sold over 91.6 million units. So nice. I want to apologize to Dom that I was an idiot and said it wouldn't reach 100 million. It was just dumb hubris. Wait, I will say,
over the course of lifetime or just...
Yeah, but this was like when we started the podcast, Jordan. This was like a long time ago. I'm not saying I was dumb for saying it. I'm just saying it was a long time ago that I said the dumb statement.
I gotcha.
What I will say, and I will argue this, And maybe we'll look back in 2 years and they'll sound just as dumb. But people are like, oh yeah, Probably. It's easily going to pass PS2's 150 million. And I had to say, not a chance in hell. Especially with next gen right on the way. I think it'll easily clear 100 million. I was stupid for ever saying that. Yeah. And I will always admit when I'm wrong. Very wrong.
You're a real piece of garbage, Jared.
Yeah, who does that? Not in Trump's America. But reaching 150 million units, I think is kind of unrealistic, right?
I think it'll be like, okay, so
I think 120.
So let's look at this turning into a legacy console, Jared, right?
Yeah.
They just now stopped manufacturing PS3s recently, within the last year, I think.
But this isn't backwards compatible.
I'm just saying, probably going to manufacture a PS4 until 2022.
Yeah.
Right? 2023, I don't think it'll go till 2024. I think, I'll even say, 2023 is when they'll stop. So,
in 4 years...
by that point, I think it could really be pushing 150. I think, 117 is more likely, but you never know. Going towards 100 or 2022 when this thing is dirt cheap and people are buying like really good games for $5-10. Who knows?
I think at its highest, I think it hits 125, and the reason I say that is because with next gen right around the corner, we're already seeing sales kind of die down overall for a year. Obviously, it sells very well in spurts. For like holiday or whatever, but over the course of a year, even their numbers are down year over year for units sold. And I believe in 2018 it sold like somewhere between like 8 and 11, somewhere in there. So if next gen is coming,
let's just say it sells 5 in 2019,
then it won't even hit 100 million.
96, right?
Yeah.
And then it sells another 5. Let's just say 10 million over the next 2 years, heading into 2021.
Here's the thing. I think
And then you're at 100 million. Yeah, so I'm thinking it's probably going to land, I'd say 117 million is not far off of where it'll land.
Yeah, I think it'll for sure be above 115. My guess is around 125, but not near 150. But who knows? It might have some crazy thing happen. I don't see it reach. That's like way astronomical in terms of when we were looking at it selling 100 when it was at 77 or whatever.
I'm looking into my crystal ball, and do you know what I'm seeing?
What are you saying? Me saying I'm wrong?
I'm seeing, it's possible. I'm seeing a game that could change the landscape, Jared. I'm seeing a game that taps into your
Jack X Combat Racing.
No, dreams.
Oh, God.
It taps into your dreams.
The crazy thing is, I think whether Ghost of Tsushima or Last of Us Part 2 come out this year, I personally don't think either are. I know it's a bit of a hot take, but I think if one of those releases this year, I think it'll hit 10 million units for the year. I think if neither of them sell, I think it'll probably still get like around 7-ish, maybe. It just depends, because we don't really know. I don't think Days Gone is a console seller. I don't think it's going to spike the numbers in any way.
Even games like Last of Us or Ghost of Tsushima are going to be less of a console seller than they would have been earlier in the generation, because people just have fucking PS4s at this point, and so they're not buying them specifically for exclusives. They're buying them or have bought them because they were only $200 on Black Friday for the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, my perspective was I only bought a PS3 for Last of Us, but that was different because the saturated market was Xbox 360. So at this point, it'd be like somebody, and I'm not saying they're the same quality. I'm not saying Gears of War 5 is going to be
gamer. Bad. You're gonna. I would say in that situation, like you're probably,
a unique circumstance. Yeah, but
unique circumstance. Yeah.
What I will say though is, say Gears 5 comes out and it's like a 9, 5, 10, right?
You caught it. PS5.
Yeah, I don't see people, even if it gets stellar reviews, going and buying an Xbox One to play that game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like where I bought a PS3 for Last of Us, just because going from the saturated market to buy the less saturated, I don't think a lot of people are going to do that.
It will be just looking at how this generation's going to end up, moving into the next one's going to be very interesting because these consoles are about to be dirt cheap, you know, and the games are already dirt cheap. There's already so many games that you could get under $20 right now if you bought a PS4, and you know what they say, Jared, it's the best time to buy consoles at the end of the life cycle. So,
well, and the crazy thing too is that sorry, I thought my phone was on silent. The crazy thing with the consoles late in the generation is when you're looking at getting into the next generation of consoles. For me, there's already, before it's even been announced and we know specs or launch titles, there's already inherent value for me in buying the next Xbox because legacy, just like there's already inherent value in you buying the next PlayStation, right? It's your trophies, it's all of that. But with Xbox, and we've talked about this multiple times, is at the moment I buy the Xbox 2, and we're assuming this, and this is kind of the trajectory Phil Spencer's talked about, so though this isn't confirmed, I would eat my own tongue if this wasn't the case. But
Jared, I don't know if I want you to do that, bud.
You'll I think this is all but confirmed that the next Xbox will be backwards compatible at launch. So therefore...
Oh my gosh, yeah. Who knows, honestly? Who the fuck knows about PlayStation? But Xbox, absolutely.
And the crazy thing is with that backwards compatibility, it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like a light switch. Like they had to... Mm-hmm. They're still releasing games in waves, right? Because it's a technology that they had to work on and build on. And I do think that even if PlayStation 5 does have backwards compatibility, I don't think it's a light switch either. So they're still going to have to build that out in some way, right? Maybe not exactly the same way as the Xbox, but in some fashion. So buying that console, I immediately have access to whatever launch titles. Usually there's a good one and some kind of like hardware polished, like look at how good this stuff is, but they're not great games. Well, I guess Forza is a good game though. I'm talking about like the Nax or like the Rise Son of Rome's, right, for PlayStation.
Oh, Xbox, I thought you were talking about like
not the showpiece. No, I'm talking about like here's a game we made on the next generation. Not necessarily good, not necessarily super pretty, but it's like a launch title.
Killzone Shadowfall.
Yeah, and Knack and Rise Son of Rome and all that.
Yep.
But with Xbox, you already have all of those backwards compatible things the moment you turn on the Xbox. So I already have games to play, which I think is inherent value.
That's a big thing, man. It's going to be a big thing moving forward. Like, we talked about packing up and taking something forward earlier, and it's just like, yeah, if you can jump in and, you know, even backwards compatibility with accessories is big, especially with families, and I think there's a lot you can do for the consumer there that will carry them over in the generation in the generation to come, and I think it's a really good way to do it, and I guarantee you Xbox and Phil Spencer, Microsoft, those guys are about to nail this.
Dude, and then if for every Xbox you purchase, you get like a free 3-month or 6-month to Game Pass, there's even more value. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, isn't that a thing already? Like, your console bundle will come with a little card for at least, not Game Pass, I mean Xbox Live Gold, I guess, but
yeah,
still, there's a lot of enticing things, you know.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I'm not going to get a PlayStation 5, but like off the bat, barring some catastrophic thing. I mean, 2013 was pretty catastrophic for Xbox, and I still bought one. But yeah. I'm looking for. I think I'll buy the Xbox first. I'll eventually get the PlayStation, but yeah, who knows? It's gonna be crazy. I'm excited. I always love this. It's scary, but it's also like really awesome to see what they're designing, and yeah, can't wait.
Okay, let's say percentage chance that let's say you go with Microsoft and I'll go with Sony. Percentage chance that they have a Switch-esque, a Switch-like console that you can take and go, and that's their one thing that they have. So I guess we know they're gonna have more than one thing. Like Microsoft's gonna have their little streaming box or whatever, but like their main thing is gonna be like the Switch. What's the percentage chance
for either of them? I say it's.
You can choose, yeah.
I say it's 0.5% for Xbox, and I think it's 2% for PlayStation.
Wow. I could see a little bit higher with PlayStation, but yeah, I definitely don't see it with Xbox. I think they already have a clearer idea of what they're looking at doing.
They would have already tried some type of handheld if they wanted to even try that, right?
Yeah.
By this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird that they haven't ever done that, and I know people say that a lot, but just thinking that they never jumped in, then again, it's a difficult market to be in, so I understand.
Hearing them talk, they want you to be able to stream Xbox games on your iPad and use your Bluetooth Xbox controller. Like, that's the future they want. They don't want to make their own handheld device.
On
you know
their
what I mean?
app. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's get to these three beefy news stories. We should be able to get to all three of them. I think we have
Give me the beef.
So first off, EA cancels the open world Star Wars game. So this is by Jason Schreier over at Kotaku.
Ooh, here's one of them partnerships that ain't going so well, Jerry.
And I actually have a bit of a hot take on this one, and you'll hear me out when we're done.
I got your bun right here.
So EA has canceled their open world Star Wars game being developed by EA Vancouver. That was announced alongside the closure of Visceral Games on October 17th, 2017. So remember that when they closed Visceral Games and we found out about Ragtag and Amy Hennig's game and all that, we found out they were converting it to an open world game. I think originally we thought it was being worked on
Carried over.
Yeah, we originally thought it was being worked on by Motive because we still don't know what Motive's doing. But it was actually EA Vancouver that was working on it all that time. And Schreier went on to update his article with information that the game was canceled in favor of a smaller project with a quicker turnaround time for EA Vancouver. Basically what he stated is people at the company were saying that this open world game, because they only used some of the assets from the Ragtag game. I mean, turning a linear Uncharted-like game into an open world experience, there's a lot of work that has to be done there. And people forget that EA Vancouver was kind of like the ancillary studio that helped everyone else. They've never really made their own game. So
if only we had Visceral to do that.
Exactly. So they wanted a quicker turnaround for a game, and we'll get into this later, but probably because they've only released 2 Star Wars games in 5 years. But sources at the company also said that no one was laid off, which is also a positive whenever you talk about EA news. You never know. And that the internal belief is actually pretty positive, that after they finish this smaller scope project, that they're going to return to the open world game. So it's not like it was like assets were destroyed or whatever. It's like the belief in the company was that they're moving to a smaller project for a quicker turnaround time, and after that's done, they think they're going to get back to the open world game. Obviously, we don't know if that's going to happen, but that's internal belief.
Yeah, this is just...
Next up, I'm going to get through this and we'll have
Still a clusterfuck. Still a clusterfuck.
So after the cancellation of Amy Hennig's Ragtag and this open world project, fans are wondering what the state of Star Wars games are at EA. We have Respawn's Jedi Fallen Order, which is scheduled for fall 2019. I'm personally excited for it because I'm excited from the Respawn perspective, not necessarily the way EA has handled Star Wars.
All that gameplay footage we've seen.
Yeah, how weird is that? And you know that's like an EA thing of like, don't show... whatever. So despite Jade Raymond's departure from EA Motive, we also don't know what they're working on. Still don't know. Remember, she left late last year.
Oh, yeah.
So that gets me worried because I'm like, maybe she was trying to... Because she has a legacy, especially with Assassin's Creed, OG AC, which we love. Maybe she was getting forced into something she didn't want to make as a creative, right? Maybe that's why she left. Who knows? But it's still worrisome when a lead leaves. Amy Hennig, now her. And now we don't know what EA Vancouver's smaller scope project is, which, according to Jason Schreier, is planned to come out in 2020. So that's like, oh man, that must be a really small scope project. What is that going to be? But to close out, EA signed a 10-year exclusivity deal with Star Wars for the license, well technically with Disney, in 2013, and has only released 2 games in its first 5 years of the deal. Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2, right? We're going to get into the conversation real quick. My hot take on this is I think people are flabbergasted and upset that this game got canceled. Jason Schreier even talked about it. It was called Project Orca, and it was still very early. This game, I don't think was even close. Like, I think this game was still 4 or 5 years off. From everything I read, how early they were in development, the fact that EA wanted a quicker turnaround. That being said, has EA mismanaged Star Wars? 100%. Do they not know what they're doing, or at least it seems like that? 100%. But my hot take on this is I don't think we're in a worse place for them canceling this specific project, because I still don't think we would have got this project for 4 or 5 years. You know what I mean?
Maybe, but it just sends us further down the rabbit hole, I think. You know.
Well, so the way I look at it is we still have Respawn's Jedi Fallen Order. I'm not saying it's necessarily a net positive. We still don't know what the game looks like. But we have a project for this year. We're assuming Battlefront 3 at some point, right? It's kind of assumed. at least by next year. Would the cadence be next year? Would it be 2020?
Yeah. 2019.
Right? Well,
or 20. I'm sorry. So Battlefield came out last year, right?
Yeah, but we know Fallen Order's coming out this year, so it's not going every 2 years. So I guess it would be next year. We're assuming Battlefront at some point, right? We don't know what Motive's project is. Honestly, we don't even know if Motive's project is Star Wars. We assume it is, but I understand people being worried for Star Wars with EA. I don't think that, for me, the cancellation of this open world game doesn't move the needle. It's still worrisome, but it doesn't take me outlandishly worried. I'm still like you know what I mean? Like if it's a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being like absolutely devastated worried, I'm at like a 7.5. This didn't move the needle to an 8. It's just like this game is like 5 years away. It just doesn't,
Yeah, it just sucks we're not playing something cool right now. It sucks that we're not playing a cool campaign. It sucks that we're not playing a cooler Mass Effect campaign in Andromeda. And what else, Jared? It sucks. I heard more revisionist history about fucking Dragon Age Inquisition.
Oh, God.
It sucks that people can't get that out of their fucking brains.
That bothers me so much. I get the Arthur meme fist, dude. I get so mad.
You know what? I'll just go ahead and say it was Michael Huber on the Easy Allies podcast, friend of the show, but I'm going to have to say he was saying how, problems with EA, and then mentioned that, both Dragon Age and Mass Effect, their most recent entries were not very good or like shaky or whatever, something along those lines. And I'm like, people forget that fucking everybody loved Inquisition the fucking year it came out, and then all of a sudden they just fucking hate it.
And the thing that bothers me too is people don't understand that like BioWare and the team that made Mass Effect Andromeda are two different teams. Like the BioWare Andromeda team was a rookie team. I'm not saying that's an excuse, but like it is a different team, right?
Yeah, that was more of a mismanaged EA situation, and this is just like a people mixing up history for whatever reason. It happens in the internet where things get misconstrued really easily, and then it can happen over a wide swath. So that sucks, but
What I will say is I like to try to find optimism in every story, right? I don't like to be very pessimistic or end on a negative note. The optimist in me says that this Star Wars thing that's happened with EA, I think, obviously Star Wars and Marvel are both owned by Disney. I wonder if this, going the way it had, kind of like let Disney greenlight Marvel's approach. I think Marvel was like, hey, we want to find specific creators to make specific games. And Disney, who's more for like the licensing, right? We've seen that with a lot of their IP. They were maybe looking at the Star Wars thing and being like, I think they're kinder to that approach. And they're like, let's greenlight it, Marvel. You can do whatever the hell you want to do, Marvel games. So the optimist in me is like, this really bad Star Wars situation is the reason we have Spider-Man. You know what I mean? The optimist in me wants to believe that like, as bad as this has gone, that's what I want to believe, whether that's true or not.
Well, I want to believe that, unfortunately we could have, but I want to believe that in the hopefully near enough future, we'll be getting Spider-Man tier Star Wars games. That would be nice.
Here's what I want to say. If Respawn's Jedi Fallen Order doesn't come out this year, no, that's not a good bet because it might just get delayed. Who knows? If Respawn's Jedi Fallen Order doesn't review like really positively, so I'm saying on average above 80, okay, if that's safe.
Sure. 85.
I will make 85. I will make a point to. I'll watch the prequel trilogy, and I don't really like those movies. I'll watch the prequel trilogy again.
No one does.
In order.
I say it has to get above an 85 Metacritic, and I don't like that that's kind of the barometer, but unfortunately it is. If it's not above that, then people are going to flip. And I say if it is, what do you think, Jared? Does that turn it around? And people, obviously people aren't just going to forgive and forget totally with EA. They've mucked up so much.
I think they need two solid releases back to back. I don't think...
Right.
The thing for me is, if Jedi Fallen Order comes out and is great, I think it does way more for solidifying Respawn for the quality they have and the quality that's kind of been overlooked with Titanfall because EA doesn't know when to release it and they give them really shitty timelines for that. I do think it'll.
They should have just done a Star Wars game instead of Titanfall 2.
No, I think the Titanfall 2 campaign was great. I mean, in hindsight, you could be like, well, if they didn't do Titanfall 2, we could have gotten a great Star Wars game earlier, possibly.
Playing that by now, yeah.
Yeah, but I do think I'm glad Titanfall 2 exists. To your point, though, if Jedi Fallen Order comes out and reviews well, I think it'll at least be positive. I think it'll be the highest reviewed out of the three, that being Battlefront 1, 2, and this. But I do think it definitely, they need a win with an 85+. It'll do more for Respawn. A follow-up project that reviews very well will do more for EA. I think they need to hit 2 in a row. The way things are stacked against EA, I don't think one good release or even great release of a Star Wars game will do anything for people.
It wouldn't be that hard to make a good Star Wars campaign, dude. Like, you guys do it with Battlefield. How the fuck?
And one thing I will say, another hot take, people love the Unleashed games. I don't think they hold up very much. I'm just saying.
People do not love the Force Unleashed games.
I think
are so hard on those.
From what I've read, people, I guess the perspective I've read is people who are like find nostalgia in it. I don't know. The Star Wars fans, in general,
people are just yearning for a halfway decent Star Wars game. Is what that is.
Yeah, let's get to this next. Speaking of yearning for things that are half baked, Randy Pitchford is getting sued. So,
yikes!
We've talked about ad nauseum on this podcast, me and you specifically, about how we feel that Gearbox has been mismanaging the Borderlands IP, and the way they've become a publisher doesn't seem very good for the company in terms of monetary gain, right? We've gone on ad nauseum about that. True. Well, turns out Randy Pitchford is getting sued by a former Gearbox lawyer and council member, Wade Callender, for allegedly taking a secret $12 million bonus as an advance for Borderlands profits that would normally go to the Gearbox staff. This is a huge allegation, obviously, because he's taking money out of his employees' mouths. And Gearbox is countersuing, alleging that Callender has an unpaid loan and mismanaged company card. So they're countersuing him, right? Now, along with the secret bonus, another accusation in the lawsuit has surfaced against Randy Pitchford, and it alleges that Pitchford had a lost USB drive in 2014 in Dallas, Texas, at Medieval Times, that medieval restaurant. And
not the type of USB drive you want to be losing, am I right, Jared?
Well, funny enough, and maybe not funny enough, some kid found it, popped it in his computer. Turns out it had secrets for Gearbox's publishing stuff. It had secrets for upcoming games. It had all of their private information in there, and it also had some of Randy Pitchford's adult content. Had underage pornography, allegedly. There's a follow-up to this that I'll get to. So in a podcast that went live the day after the lawsuit surfaced publicly, Pitchford went on this diatribe talking about that whole story and how the video actually featured a barely legal cam girl who he paid to like do stuff and then record it, right? So there could be a misconstruction there.
He came out and was like, "Oh no, it was just a really teen-looking girl."
Yeah, and then he talked about her being like a magician, not a It's gross. It's gross. The world we live in. So it's basically, it could possibly be.
So he wasn't even like, he didn't even. He was like, guys, it's fine.
Exactly. He's like, it's legal porn. And it's like, that's half of the problem, Pitchford. So yeah, who knows if that was true or not? If he's just kind of covering himself, who knows, right? If he isn't, that's awful.
So we don't even know. There may have been actual child pornography on there.
Or it was just some kid looking at it and thinking because they looked so young, he misconstrued it as it being illegal when it was actually legal, right? Still weird, but legal.
Gotcha.
So there's a follow-up to this. So after all of this surfaced, the former VP of marketing at Gearbox, David Eddings, for reference, he worked there from 2003 to 2017 before having a fallout with Randy Pitchford. He tweeted...
Jared Schreier, am I over here? Am I right?
He tweeted, "Yes, it's true," right? In quotations. He didn't have quotation. I'm telling you, this is written in quotations. Yes, it's true. And so people read this and they're like, well, what does this mean? Yes, it's true to all of it, to some of it. And Eddings clarified in a following tweet, liar? Yes. Con man? Yes. Pervert? No idea. So basically, he clarified and said that, like, the whole $12 million bonus thing is 100% true, and he's just known for being a con man, but the pervert thing he had no idea about, right? The child pornography thing. Now, there were other rumblings that remember when we reported on Randy Pitchford apparently having an assistant that embezzled money from him? Turns out that might have been actually made up by Randy Pitchford, so that way people didn't go looking for the money that he took when people weren't looking.
Interesting. Jared, I'll tell you what he's been buying.
Oh, God.
Ugly shirts.
God.
Have you seen the shirts that this man wears?
Yeah.
Ugly shirts. Very expensive, ugly shirts is what he's been buying.
Here's the thing. Who knows if the child pornography stuff is real or not? You know what I mean? I kind of don't want to focus on that just because of the follow-ups we've heard from people. The con man stuff, the stealing money, that on its own is bad, right? Stealing money from your employees for profits for a game they made. I don't see this ending positively for Randy Pitchford in any way. I think that by the end, by 2020, I don't think Randy Pitchford will be associated with Gearbox anymore.
You think they're strong enough to withstand him?
It's tough, man. I don't, because we've talked about their publishing, like what we perceive as publishing issues. I could see Pitchford leaving, and I could see them getting picked up by a Microsoft or the thing with Activision, dude, and we'll get to this in the next story, is that they love monetizing games, and Borderlands, with all of its emphasis on guns, I could totally see them monetizing the hell out of that.
They're already with 2K, right? Or Take-Two, I should say.
Yeah, but I'm saying in terms of, like, I think with Gearbox now, they're with them, but they do have creative control, right? Sure. I do think that maybe if Pitchford leaves and there's some shakiness there, I think maybe Activision or Take-Two, 2K would be like, hey, we need to make sure we return a profit on this. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it sucks mostly that from a gaming perspective that Borderlands has been so mishandled. You know, their other properties are not of much interest to me, but the whole Borderlands situation sucks. Once again, like Star Wars, that we're not playing an awesome Borderlands 3. I mean, is Borderlands 3, is Borderlands going to skip having an actual game on, like the PlayStation
4 and Xbox
generation?
One? Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say is, obviously this whole, like, pornography thing came out and people are like, oh, I always knew it, he looked weird, which tends to happen with people. They're like, in hindsight. The thing I will say in terms of the $12 million secret bonus, Randy Pitchford has always seemed like an a-hole. We've heard stories, if you follow the gaming industry, people talk about how much of an a-hole he is. You know what I mean? So, kind of the proof is in the pudding there.
Did you watch the recent Half-Life documentary that NoClip did, heavily featuring Randy Pitchford?
Nah. I've never been interested in Half-Life, so it didn't catch me.
Dude, I just fucking love NoClip. That's what I'm like. I watch documentaries about shit I could care less about. Like,
yeah,
Final Fantasy 14. Okay, here we go.
I thought you had a follow up to Randy Pitchford being in it.
3-part series for Final Fantasy 14. I don't know. NoClip's the shit. I love it.
Let's go to our next story here. We talked about Randy Pitchford possibly getting a divorce from Gearbox forcibly, probably. Let's talk about another divorce that happened. Bungie and Activision. This came out of nowhere. Unless you were paying attention.
Yeah, did it?
After rumors started swirling, Bungie announced on their own site that they would be splitting from Activision and would become fully independent. Their partnership was made in 2010 on the belief that their new Destiny IP would be a 10-year commitment between Bungie and Activision. Kotaku's Jason Schreier stated that according to...
It's a 10-year game, remember? They're
exactly.
Gonna support Destiny for 10 years, the one game, Jared.
Well, no, they said it was not a 10-year game. They said it was a 10-year experience with your character or something that, your character from the beginning will transfer to the end, which never really came to fruition because in Destiny 2 you don't really get anything from Destiny 1 outside of some badges. So Kotaku's Jason Schreier stated that according to his sources there have been disagreements between the two companies even before the release of the original Destiny. Remember, we've talked about this numerous times that ever since, even before the release of the first game, they've butted heads because Bungie wanted more creative control and Activision wanted more monetary gain. And we heard the story that apparently most of the game was scrapped a year before its release because Bungie didn't like the campaign that they kind of were forced into making.
That's why the original campaign is like a few hours long and doesn't, barely makes any sense, barely any actual story content there, and a lot of turmoil before this game came out, around the release, and even now after. It's lots of ups and downs.
And apparently Bungie didn't really like the delivery cadence for DLC either, where it's like 2 in the fall and then like one big one the following year or whatever. So it seemed that Activision's need for profit often got in the way of Bungie's creative ambitions. This leads me to some questions I want to talk about with you. So first off, what does this mean for Bungie moving forward? This means that they're independent. This means that they'll have full creative control. But people have to realize that this means that they don't have the backing of a major publisher. As of now, who knows if they partner with somebody else. But people have to understand that Bungie was given a lot of investment from Activision. Vicarious Visions handled Destiny 2 on PC. So if Destiny 3 comes out on PC, they're going to have to learn how to port it because they didn't even do it for Destiny 2. And if you remember, Bungie never ported games for Xbox to PC because Halo was never on PC. So they don't have experience with that at all. Not to say that they can't do it, but it is something that they're going to have to figure out how to do in the future. I do think them not having Activision's financial backing, I think people have to understand that Destiny 3 or Destiny moving forward is going to be different. I think that you might not see necessarily the big level polish that you're assuming. I think the scope you're going to oh yeah, 100%. I think the scope you're going to have to assume is going to be smaller too.
I just think they've made enough money on their own.
Oh, not even close, dude. If Activision's splitting from them, I don't think Destiny is necessarily as profitable as people think it is. It's an expensive game to make, man. Expensive.
Sure.
I'm not saying it's going to turn into a AA game. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think that people have to understand that their delivery cadence for DLC is going to be entirely different. I guess for their benefit because they didn't like it. I just think that people are going to have to adjust their expectations if they don't partner up with another big publisher. We don't know. Destiny 3 could be announced and they partner with some other big publisher, right? But as it sits, I think people have to understand that things are going to be different for Bungie, and especially Destiny 2. Like, people are so excited and jumping off the wall, like, yeah, they broke away from Activision. Some of the mistakes that happened with Destiny 2 and Destiny weren't Activision. Some of them were, but some of them were also Bungie's decision, right? Not all of the problems that Destiny has or had were Activision's fault. So I understand why people are positive on it, but I do think that people need to understand where Bungie sits now. What do you think about all of it?
I mostly agree with what you're saying, absolutely. I think that it's going to be a tough road out there, but certainly something that they could take to another publisher. It's absolutely viable in that sense. Other than that, I would say that I'm sure they're going to work on other stuff as well, and they're a pretty sizable studio, but it's going to be something interesting to watch, I would say, because if nothing else, it's a big franchise. Destiny is something that people clamor for, even if it's not gigantic in the future. I still think it'll be around.
Yeah, I mean it's tough. What goes through my mind is how is their platform going to change? Is there a world where we see Destiny 3 come out and it's $30 instead of $60, and it's a different kind of service that they provide, right? That's the one thing that I'm most interested in, is what they decide to do with their pricing model and their structure. There's a possibility that they could go free to play with the next Destiny, and they could change up the complete way that they distribute it. Who knows? We live in a different world now, so yeah. I am cautiously optimistic. I just think that there's a lot of people who are blindly over the top optimistic because, oh, they've broken out from the evil corporation that is Activision, and that is great. And I do think having creative freedom is amazing for people in an industry where your creative mind kind of dictates what you can accomplish. But there are a lot of things that Activision also provided, and there's a lot of things that Bungie made in terms of decisions on their own that Destiny 3 could come out and still have some issues that people have had with Destiny for the last 6 years, right? I don't know. It came out of nowhere. This is obviously, it's happened twice for Bungie now, which is like, I know we like to be on the side of positivity for the developer, but like they separated from Microsoft and now they're separating from Activision. I'm not saying it's necessarily their fault, but they're the ones who also agree to these partnerships. So maybe they need to take a look at themselves and be like, maybe we don't go for the quick big dollar anymore. You know what I mean? And that's like, well, then do they sign with another publisher and they're the hamstrung creatively again? They got $100 million from NetEase, who's known for mobile games and these other experiences. Who's to say that their next game isn't influenced by NetEase? You know? Who knows?
NetEase.
We'll see. But Activision. So I know I didn't want to seem like a corporate apologist there. Obviously, being partnered with Activision.
You fucking monkey suit wearing son of a bitch.
I know people love to hate EA. For me, I actually dislike Activision a lot more than EA, and that's just my own personal opinion, because of the way they delay microtransactions on Call of Duty and a lot of the scummy stuff they do. Not to say EA doesn't do scummy stuff.
They're more quietly scummy. EA is not as good about getting away with their schemes.
Yeah. With Activision, I agree. I think people often forget how scummy Activision is. They purchased Blizzard, and people were worried like what was going to happen to Blizzard, right? Because Blizzard was this company that was kind of like CD Projekt Red in a lot of ways. Obviously, way bigger scale, but like a close connection with their fans and their community, beloved games. They listened to their community and the feedback, and they built these awesome worlds that people loved. Let's talk about this cataclysmic split between Bungie and Activision. It happened during the same time, or during the same couple of weeks, that the industry has seen some strange activity at the top of Activision Blizzard. They've seen the departure of their CEO and CFO, as well as Blizzard's former president. There have been rumblings of layoffs and budget reductions inside Activision Blizzard. People are worried, right? There's budget cuts, people are getting laid off. This was happening at the same time and met with criticism because their newly appointed CFO, Dennis Durkin, received $15 million for his appointment to the position. So the company, people were working at Blizzard.
Don't you get $15 million when you walk through a door, Jared?
People at Blizzard are like, so you're telling me all these people are going to lose their jobs, people have committed their lives to making Blizzard what it was, and you appoint this guy to CFO and he gets $15 million and we're talking about budget reductions? People were pissed off, deservedly so. Remember, ever since Blizzard's acquisition by Activision, fans have been worried that their beloved company would morph into something they no longer recognized. We kind of saw that last year with the recent Diablo Immortal debacle, where they announced this mobile game and people were like, is it coming to other platforms? And they responded on stage by saying, what, you guys don't have phones? Like, who says that? Obviously, they were a little bit entitled in terms of like the fans, but bad response. People have been worried about, World of Warcraft, the way Activision is. This divorce with Bungie came out of nowhere. What if tomorrow we find out that World of Warcraft is getting shut down by the end of 2019? Or in a month? You know how crazy that would be for fans of Blizzard? That this thing has been running for almost 10 years is going to be gone, More than 10 years. I don't remember when World of Warcraft came out. Yeah, like 15 years. Maybe? 2014 years?
Yeah.
It's just... fans of Blizzard have been seeing their franchises diminish in the hands of Activision. Activision is seeing some crazy turnover at the top in terms of people leaving. They're talking about layoffs and budget reductions and giving somebody $15 million for walking into the door. People have a right to be worried about Activision Blizzard, I think.
Yeah.
I understand why people dislike EA. I get it. But Activision is, I don't know. For me, EA is like the person that tries to like grab the dollar that's hanging out of your back pocket Activision is the person. I guess EA is the person that would tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, dude, you had $1 hanging out in your pocket. I took it." Activision is the person that sees you drop your wallet and is your friend, and then takes your wallet and never tells you that they got it and spent your money. I don't know. It just.
Or he's like, "Hey man,
I'm glad I'm not a huge fan of Blizzard
hanging
products.
out of your back pocket." Sorry.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm not a huge fan of Blizzard because I couldn't imagine what being a fan of all those franchises is like, knowing that this company bought your company or merged with them and is just making everything worse, you know? So, yeah. What do you think about all of this? About the budget cuts and rumblings of layoffs, the bonus, all of that?
Once again, agree with what you're saying, and I just think that I was thinking about I guess it's Soderlund that was leaving EA, and they were talking about his gigantic salaries. I don't understand why they're just throwing unseemly amounts of money at these people when they could be putting a little bit more into their games and doing a lot for not only the player but also themselves in the way of goodwill that's going to extend their prosperity further into the future.
Yeah. We went a little long with these beefy news stories, so I don't want to go too long on what we're going to be playing. For me, like I said, DMC5 demo. I want to get to the Spider-Man DLC, and probably mess around some other stuff. I want to try to go see Glass too. I'm hearing not great things in terms of reviews, but I still am interested in seeing it. Yeah. So, what about you?
So I do want to give a shout out. I recently rewatched the Blade Runner movies. I think I mentioned that. And so I just jumped back into the Blade Runner Blackout 2022 anime short that is done by the creator of Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo, a couple of my favorites. And it's just really well done. The music is done by Flying Lotus, and the visuals and the story, the characters, it's all really, really well done. So I just wanted to give that a shout out, and I'll be playing some Bayonetta, hopefully on my Switch, maybe some Smash Bros, some Red Dead on the PS4. Still getting hyped for that Kingdom Hearts though, baby.
Awesome. Thank you guys for listening. If you can, please follow us on iTunes, leave us a review. It definitely helps. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Like the video. If you're watching this on YouTube, that'd be great to like the video as well. Smash that bell icon so you know when we're making you upload. You can follow us on Twitter at CTRLINT. That's Controlled Interest Abbreviated. I'm at Jared _ Jordan is at Melomotus. Thank you guys for listening. We'll be back in episode 130. And hopefully Dom will be back from his birthday masquerade at the age of 45, the ripe old age. Thank you guys for listening.